I welcome you all in this class on 25th May 2021. The time is around 8 p.m. It's 8:05 p.m. exactly. We shall have a class on an essay written by one of the famous writers, one of the famous politicians, one of the famous diplomats of our country, whose name is Shashi Tharoor, right? So I will share the screen with you so that you will come to know about the topic and the different aspects of that topic which we are going to discuss today. So here is the screen in front of you. The name of this article, the name of this essay is Freedom of the Press. Freedom of the Press, written by Shashi Tharoor on the occasion of World Press Freedom Day, that is observed on 3rd May every year almost across the world. So the topic is Freedom of the Press by Shashi Tharoor. Before we move on to the text of the essay and sum up the main points enumerated in the essay by Shashi Tharoor, let us discuss the biography, a short biography of the author. Shashi Tharoor was born on 9th March 1956 in London. We all know that Shashi Tharoor is a politician, he was a diplomat, he is an eloquent public speaker, and a writer, an author. As far as his being a diplomat is concerned, he was the former United Nations Under Secretary General for Communication and Public Information. Later on, he resigned from the United Nations and came to India and joined Indian National Congress, one of the oldest political parties from our country, in the year 2009. You can see it on your screens that he is an MP, a member of parliament from Thiruvananthapuram, Tamil Nadu, since the year 2009. Let me tell you here that Shashi Tharoor has not lost any election since he joined Indian National Congress in 2009. We will move on to the next slide. He is Shashi Tharoor in front of you, one of the smartest, one of the most intelligent politicians from our country, who has been a minister twice. We will discuss that in the next slide. But before that, you can see the two pictures I have pasted on this slide for you people, so that you will get familiar with the face of this writer, who is very famous on Twitter as well. Like I told you in the last lecture, that he's very famous on Twitter for introducing, for bringing new words to the people, right? We will move on to the next slide. About the author continues. I will continue with a short biography of the author. He was a Minister of State for External Affairs during the year 2009-2010, during UPA government. Later on, he was a Human Resource Development Minister from the year 2012 to 2014. He has written around 20 books, rather more than 20 books, both fiction and non-fiction. I hope you understand that these two terms, fiction and non-fiction. Here, in very simple terms, fiction is novel, right? He has written some novels. Short stories also come under fiction, and then non-fiction. Non-fiction is prose, like essays, collection of essays, and other books, including biography and all. Hundreds of columns in different newspapers. Earlier, up to around 2010 and 12, he was a regular contributor to some of the leading newspapers across the world, not only across the country. The newspapers like the Times of India, the Indian Express, the Hindu, etc. As far as personal life is concerned, he married thrice. First, he married Tilotama Mukherjee in the year 1981. She was a half Bengali and a half Kashmiri woman. Later on, he got separated from her. Mrs. Mukherjee or Ms. Mukherjee is working as a professor nowadays. And then he married a Canadian woman. Her name is Chester Giles in 2007. But after a few months, he got separated from her. And then he married one of the leading business women of India, of southern India, in fact. Her name was Sunanda Pushkar. And she died in a very mysterious situation in one of the leading hotels of New Delhi. And an FIR, a case is still going on. The matter is sub judice against Shashi Tharoor. He has been charged for the murder of his wife Sunanda Pushkar. Such a writer who is so charismatic, it's very obvious that such a writer will get lots and lots of awards. He got around 20 awards, and the most prominent among those awards is Sahitya Academy Award, which was given to him, which was awarded to him in the year 2019. Shashi Tharoor is famous for the tough choice of words. His diction, his syntax is very, uh, using the word tough is may not be, justified, but it's very, he's famous for these things, choice of tough words and all. And above all, he is an eloquent speaker. You may not agree with him as a politician. You may not agree with him for his political views. But as far as the eloquence of speeches is concerned, as far as brevity of speeches is concerned, he is one of the best person who speaks English so well in our country. I have given you around four, these YouTube links here. I understand that these YouTube links cannot be clicked when you watch it online, when you are in this online class, or when you will later on watch its lecture on YouTube. But this is a kind of hint for you people that you can check, Shashi Tharoor's speeches on YouTube. It will surely, add to your listening skill, and you can learn to speak English well by listening to such good writers like Shashi Tharoor. One of the famous speeches by Shashi Tharoor is uh, he gave a speech in 2015 in Oxford Hall, and that speech is very famous. It has millions of views on YouTube. You can check that. As far as the essay Freedom of the Press is concerned, it was written on the occasion of World Press Freedom Day, which is observed on 3rd May, as I have already told you. And this essay, this article appeared in the newspaper The Hindu on 11th May 2003. So the date of publication of the essay is 11th May 2003. Now, what are the main points of the essay? I will discuss those points with you. He actually talks about the freedom of the press. He actually talks about the press, which is kind of choked nowadays because of various kinds of censorships. He talks about, in the essay, he talks about the 12 journalists who got killed in the year 2003. And he gave us this number, and he quotes a New York based committee to protect journalists. It's an independent committee in New York, and he quotes them and says that around 12 journalists had lost their life in the line of the duty, of covering the news for the general public. Then he talks about the freedom of expression and freedom of getting information. As human beings, all of us have the right to get the correct information. The information cannot be kept behind the curtains. We as human beings, we as citizens of the country, cannot be uh, cannot be kept in dark. So getting right information is our right. And in the same manner, freedom of expression, freedom of expression of our views is important. Now you will ask me a question that up to what extent we can express our views. The answer is up to the extent from where other person's suffering starts, right? It's not like freedom of expression is you can go out and abuse anyone. No, that is not freedom of expression. So what I said is freedom of expression stops at the point where the other person's suffering starts. You have to stop there. You cannot make the other person suffer because of your right of freedom of expression, right? So then he talks about the 3rd May, and he says that this 3rd May is the anniversary of the declaration of Windhoek. Windhoek is a place in Namibia, a country, Namibia. And he says that 3rd May is the anniversary of the declaration of Windhoek, adopted in which was decided. I mean, this seminar was held in Namibia, in Windhoek, in 1991. And the seminar was organized by the United Nations and UNESCO, right? And since that day, 3rd May is celebrated, it is observed as the World Press Freedom Day. The next point which he discusses in his essay is, he says that the freedom of the press is the most essential component of democracy. In a democratic country, the press should be free to express itself. The other aspect, the other facet of this discussion is that the press has to be responsible enough to bring only the correct information to the public. Nowadays, you are young people, you understand that nowadays you have so many news channels, so many pages on different social media like Facebook, Twitter, and other Facebook, on the other social media, other social apps, where you can see any Tom, Dick, and Harry taking up a microphone and becoming a journalist or a reporter. People don't understand the difference between a journalist and a reporter. This is the tragedy of the present times. But if the press, both electronic, social, as well as print, now we have social media as well. Earlier, we used to have print media and electronic media, and only these two types of media are being discussed by Shashi Tharoor. But nowadays, we have social media as well. Social media is more, I mean, it has a greater impact nowadays as compared to print media and the other types of media, because most of the young men they use social media. They are on social networking sites and they get influenced the way the news and the information is provided to them. So he says that the most essential component of democracy is the freedom of the press. And then he talks about the information, the freedom of press, and he says that 3 concepts, that is information, freedom of press, and accountability. These 3 are interdependent. If you get correct information through a press which is free to express itself, then the government can be held accountable for its faults, right? So in a healthy democracy, and we have a healthy democracy in our country, in a democracy like India, the accountability of the government depends on the freedom of the press, which in turn depends on the correct information which the press gives to the general public and the general public receives from the press. Now, what is done by press? The press receives information from different sources, both government and non-government sources. It downloads that information, and then it delivers that information. It disseminates that information to the general public through 2 modes. Shashi Tharoor says that there are 2 modes. One is print media and another is electronic media, right? So I have tried to show it in a graphic representation: receive information, download information, and then disseminate information to the general public through print media and electronic media. Coming to the next point in the essay, this is the next and the last point almost. I have tried my level best to sum up the main points of the essay, because I already share the text with you. For further details of the essay, you can read the text carefully. There should be no government censorship on media. Shashi Tharoor believes that there should be no government censorship on media. He substantiates the point that the press should not be under government control. Once the press comes under government control, it ceases to be a free press, right? There are so many examples. I mean, you people are capable enough, mature enough to understand. There are so many TV channels. I will take the example of TV channels where it gets very obvious the way they share news with us, the way they share information with us. It gets very obvious that they are under government censorship, or they favor a particular ideology, a particular set of beliefs, a particular political party, or a particular, narrative in the society, right? So, freedom of press, there should be no government censorship, there should be complete freedom to the press, but the press has to realize its duties, because it is called the fourth pillar of the democracy, right? So then he talks about the World Summit on Information Society, which was held on 10 to 12 December 2003. At the time of the publication of the essay, this summit was announced, because the essay was published in May 2003, and the Shashi Tharoor says that the World Summit on Information Society will be held on 10th to 12th December 2003. Then Shashi Tharoor talks about the local language, the cultural diversity, and pluralism. Pluralism, cultural diversity, and local language. He says that press has to take care of these three issues very, very, keenly. These 3 points, these 3 concepts need to be respected in all the cases: the local language, the cultural diversity of our country, of any country for that matter, because something which is culturally acceptable to me or my society or my place may not be acceptable to your society or your place. So taking care of cultural diversity is very important. In some societies, they have a particular set of beliefs, they have some particular and specific conventions, right? In the other part of the country, those conventions hardly, they hardly know about them, and they may not show any respect to them. But as the press is responsible agency and institution of a country, it has to show respect to cultural diversity and pluralism. Again, pluralism is a country like ours. It's pluralistic country where hundreds of religions, hundreds of cultures, thousands of languages, they live together. So this has to be taken care of. Then he talks about the print media, which you already know: the newspapers, the journals, the magazines, the digital media, right? The websites, the web pages, the e-form of, any media agency. Then he talks about the conventional media, which is radio and television, and he believes that radio and television are very important. For us, radio may not be very important. For us, television may not be very important, because we are so tech savvy that all the time we have internet in our hands, we have Android phones in our hand. So all the time we are connected to hundreds of newspapers and web pages, etc., where we can get latest information, a minute by minute information we can get. But for more than half of the population of our country, this mobile phone is still a luxury. They cannot afford it, and they cannot afford to handle it. Even if some old people who are literate enough to use a phone, they are not able to browse those sources of information. So radio and television is very important for the poor and the illiterate population of our country. This is how he ends this essay, Freedom of the Press. This is all about Shashi Tharoor's essay. I hope that I was clear enough to bring out the main points to you people. uh, I will end this lecture with a quote by Thomas Jefferson, where he says, no government ought to be without censors. No government ought to be without censors. Every government should be under a pressure from the public. This is what he means. Only then a government can be held accountable, right? Because, like, we all know that government is for the people, by the people, of the people. And then in the other part of the quote, he says, and where the press is not free, no one ever will. And in a place, in a country where the press is not free, where the freedom of the press is not there, no one ever will. Nobody can be free in a country where press is not free. Not even a single individual can be considered free if the press is not free in a country. This is the quote by Thomas Jefferson. Thank you for watching, for listening patiently. And now, if there are any questions, you may ask here, or you can comment on the YouTube or the other sources, wherever I will share this lecture with you. Thank you.